.NET, right? Remember the .NET command line. And we can do this in Visual Studio, but I'd like to see this here. We're going to say .NET. And remember how we talked about the different kinds of tools that there are?
So do we have an Entity Framework tool?
We do have an Entity Framework tool. Excellent. We have .NET EF.
Oh, but we didn't need to add it to the tools section this time.
Ooh, that's a great point. Let's find out. Did we? So here's our dependencies, blah, blah, blah. Tools. All right.
There it is, Entity Frameworks tool.
So that's a tool. Secrets management is a tool. The code generator is a tool. So we have an Entity Framework tool. So I'm going to say .NET EF migrations, and this is all in the docs. I'm going to add an initial migration. So basically I'm going to say make a table called movies. That's the idea here. And then I'm going to say .NET EF database update. All right. So at this point, we should have a database that has movies, at least as a table.
Can we see it here?
We will go and run the app, and we will see the list of the data in the database. And we should be able to see where it's located.
Yeah. Would it be under data?
It is in, is it in data? No. That is the migration.
Okay.
This is the thing, we'll talk about this tomorrow, but that's the initial creation of that database. This is the description of how to make the tables. So here it says create a movie table and ID and genre. And we'll have Rowan Miller from the Entity Framework team come and chat with us about that.
That would be a very good one.
Mm-hmm. And in the app settings, we have our database connection string right there.
So if I was connecting to an external database,
then your connection string goes right there. And again, you might have app settings dot development or app settings dot production.
Okay.
Okay, so right now this is for development, so we're just using a local database, but I might put that in Azure at some point in the future. Okay. So let's hit /movies, see what that looks like. All right.
Oh,
so we didn't get an error.
We didn't.
So that's a good sign. So let's say create new. And I want to point this out. This is really significant. Movie/create, we just did a get, right?
Yep.
HTTP get. We got this form here. Okay, it's a good looking form. Worked out pretty nicely. Let's look at what that code looks like. That is down here.
In the create.razor, right?
Yep, so the create.cshtml,
which is a
razor page. So here...
Oh, so all this, the stuff in purple, is that razor?
Everything on the page is razor, and these are razor tag helpers.
So those are tag helpers.
And we'll talk about those, so watch for razor tag helpers. But watch happens if I remove that. See how form is now just a regular looking maroon color? As soon as I say ASP:\action, that's not HTML. That's a tag helper. This form, when we render that, is actually going to say form action equals post or method equals post action /movies/create. Here's the thing. I could write these forms myself. I could do this. Kind of sucks. But what if I decided to change that URL?
Then you have to manually go in and do it.
I would have to go and do it here and everywhere else.
So the best way would be what we had previously.
And additionally, where do you think it's going to get that URL from? Where do we have a list of all the routes that could potentially happen, right? The routing table goes both ways.
Okay.
So you can say to ASP.NET Core, the movies controller has a method called create. What's the URL for that? And then it will generate that URL for you.
All right.
So you don't have to think about URLs. And if you decide to change movies to films,
you still don't need to think
do it in one place
versus having to boot it every single place in your code.
Exactly. Okay. So here we are saying, give me an input for the title of the movie and give me an input for the release date. and I'm not having to say anything about whether it's a date or whether it's an integer. Notice that there's nothing about decimals or not. ASP.NET is going to automatically take each of these purple controls and do the right thing. And we'll see that when we do a view source. Okay? So when I type something in,
That's a really cheap movie.
it's pretty cheap, sorry. I hit create. Now we're on the list here. That seemed very simple.
It did.
But in fact, there was a thing that happened there that was called post, redirect, get, or PRG.
And how would I see that those parts come together?
I'll show you. And before I do that, let me show you post, redirect, get. See, it is a web development design pattern that tries to prevent duplicate form submissions. Have you ever been in a situation where you were browsing the web, you fill out a form, and then you hit back?
Yes.
And you get this warning, like, you don't want to do that. We're gonna post it again. And you're like, I don't want to get charged twice.
Yep.
Post, redirect, get tries to support bookmarks and refreshing in a way that doesn't cause duplicates. It's trying to prevent duplicates. It's a specific technique for this. So let's walk through that and try to, like you said, maybe visualize it.
Visualize how it works, yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to hit Create New again. And in the browser here, I'm going to go to the F12 Developer Tools. That's going to pop up at the bottom. Now I'm using Edge, but you're welcome to use Firefox or Chrome or whatever makes you happy. Okay? And we'll filter this because I don't want to see all this CSS.
No.
I'm just going to see documents.
Okay.
All right?
So we're going to restart the page and see what happens?
And then I'm going to click here where it says clear entries on navigate. I don't want that. I want navigations to not clear this list. So let's go and fill something out again. Title, Shawshank Redemption. You seen the Shawshank Redemption?
Yeah.
It's a classic.
It's a great movie. It's an amazing book.
It is. There's like a channel on cable that's just the Shawshank Redemption.
Like what? Playing again and again and again.
TNT, it's always on. Okay, so I'm going to hit create and watch what happens.
Okay.
I think I needed to, I think I maybe made my filter too much. Let me try again. I want to say other and documents and try that again. Because I want to see everything.
Back to the Future.
Oh, Ghostbusters 2. I can do this all day. There we go.
Okay, what's happening?
There we go. All right. What happened here?
So we have a movie that was a get.
We had the movie create form. The empty form was a get. That was here. So we got that form.
And say it's okay, we're good to go.
Yeah. So then we filled it out and we did a post. That was with the contents of the form. And we can go back over here.
And can you see what was in that? There it is.
Right. So this is how stuff is passed. Notice how I passed in Ghostbusters space 2, but it gets encoded, so it's Ghostbusters plus 2. The slash becomes a %2f. You don't need to think about those things, but it's good to know that things get encoded on the way back. So all of that got sent back to MVC, and it got sent to the movies controller to create. Here's where it's significant, though. We were already on create. So how do we call create twice? Once is a get and once is a post. Gets and posts can be treated differently. So here's the get for create. Look how simple it is. It just returns that empty form that you have to fill out.
That's all it does.
That's all it has to do is an empty form. It doesn't even have to go to the database. Right? Then we say here,
here's the post, right?
Yeah, and notice that it is also named create. It's an overload.
Okay.
So posts go here.
And then there's some sort of binding that happens.
So we want to get a movie from the form post. So remember what was passed in. Name value
Value
pairs,
pairs.
right? Okay. So we want to say, hey, go and get the name value pairs, make me a movie, and bind genre, price, back and forth.
And is this what we call data? No. Is this what we call data binding?
Model binding.
Model binding, yes.
Exactly. This used to suck.
What did you used to do?
Var x equals new movie.title equals request.form title, movie.price equals request.form, and then you had to get that and convert it to a decimal and make sure it was really a decimal. You know what I mean? It was, we call left hand, right hand.
So you're passing from side to side.
And imagine, this is only an object with 5.
So if it was millions, if we were
Well, I don't think like millions, but order details could be hundreds of somethings, right?
What about banks?
And for loops inside of things, thinking about secure, like you said, banks, secure data, it gets complicated really, really fast. So model binding can take an object and make one. So I'm going to put a breakpoint here, and we'll actually do this again really quickly and watch it happen and keep going through the post redirect get. Okay? So here we go. I'm going to bring this up. Developer tools / movies. Oops. / movies. All right. So I'm going to clear this.
And then
Create new. You said Back to the Future.
yeah, best movie ever made.
Is it?
Yep.
Okay. Create. Now we're broken. That doesn't mean that we're busted. That just means that we're stopped. So what do we do?
So can I look in there and see what's coming back?
So let's look at movie. I can actually push these little push pins,
That's pretty cool.
and I'm going to put them off right there.
So this is telling you everything that we've got back.
No, interesting. So this is not showing everything that we got back. It's showing everything that ended up in movie. We could look at the request object if there was other stuff.
Okay.
So people can do what are called over posts, where they are being sneaky and they go into the developer tools and they add additional stuff. They could say movie.discounted price and try to send us evil.
Oh, like the spam?
Yeah, or they could try to lower the price. People will go and do over posts and try to lower the price of objects in their shopping cart. But that's why we said bind. We're only looking at those 5 things. Other things that got passed in would be completely ignored.
Okay, so if someone tried to hack or sneak the system.
If we do it right, then theoretically they would have a harder time. Additionally, because I'm at a breakpoint here, I could even change things and lie and say that Back to the Future is a drama.
So if we continued.
So let's continue. I'm going to use F10. The model state is valid. So now we're going to add this movie to the database. Save that. That was post. What's next? Redirect. So it's going to redirect to the index action. Notice that it doesn't say redirect / movies.
No, it just redirects it over.
No, but it redirects to /index, which pulls out of the routing table. Remember how the routing table knows where the URLs are?
Yes. So if we go back to those, we will see it change to drama.
In this case here, oh, it looks like I took too long. Let's see if that worked. I either crashed it or it ran too long. Let's try and see if I actually made it. Did we make Back to the Future? We did. Sometimes if you sit in a breakpoint for too long, it will eventually get tired of waiting for you. And
It'll be like, bye.
That's like, forget you. So post redirect get, let me turn off this breakpoint here. I'll show you this again. Create new. There's a thing called robo form that you can get that will fill out these forms for you if this eventually gets boring. And of course you can do automated testing as well. I'm running out of movies. All right, let's do our filter now. Post to create. Do the redirect back to movies, which then does a get. So it's post, redirect, get. The result is that you have a nice, clean push create, type something, you show up right back here.
Without having to see something else.
Without having, and if I notice I can back up and it's not saying.
It's not giving you that,
I'm going to post
what
it
are you
again.
doing?
Exactly. And if I hover over these details, now I'm going to hover here, look in the lower left corner. It's a little small, I'm afraid. Let me see if I can make it easier for folks that are watching this from home. Lower left corner here, watch right down here. Details /3.
So it's giving me its ID?
Exactly. So remember what the index page looked like. Details, that's the action. So it's movie details with the route ID of ID. We could have written that ourselves. We could have written out like a string, like /movie /detail /quote ID. But again, we might want to change it to films another day, right?
Projects evolve over time.
Projects evolve, so you don't want to lock down your URL. So here is, where's our details? Where's the details? Details. There we go. Look how nice and clean this is. So, details, passing in an integer. Is it null? Not found. What's a not found?
404.
It's a 404. So you don't have to write 404 even.
It's just not found. So is that like, do we have a whole bunch of stuff for that, for like other stuff?
In fact. Good call. There's redirect, and there's redirect permanent, and there's not found, and there's like server error and all this crap.
So we don't need,
you don't have to know the numbers. You know that they exist, but you don't have to hard code the number. So then we go and we say, hey, database context, go and get a single movie with the ID of ID. Did that work? No, not found. So there's two reasons it could be not found. Otherwise, we pass into the view and we get the movie. So this means we can go over here and say details. There's 2. I can hack the URL.
4 and it should change.
Yeah, there you go.
But if you put like 10.
Yeah, good point. That 404 happened explicitly because of that not coming back from the database.
Okay.
Make sense?
Makes sense.
It's pretty clean. So one thing that is interesting is the way that I've been passing in dates has been a little bit what they call ethnocentric. A little bit American.
Very American.
You may not appreciate this here because there's my birthday, right? Is my birthday 1/22 or is it 22/1? You all like to do day, month. You think like this?
I think like that. The right way.
There's no 22nd month. That makes no sense. Let's take a look at that. All right? Not going to let me do that.
Because it just doesn't understand the date.
It knows that it knows that that's a wrong date, and it doesn't like that idea.
So how can I change it to work for different things?
So you can express more about a particular data type by going back to the original model. So let's go back to movie. See where it says release date?
Yeah.
And you know how we put attributes on controllers for things like the routing table? You give a hint. That's what an attribute is. I could say display format. This is called a data annotation. I'm going to say a data format string. We're going to tell it exactly how we want it to be. And we'll say year, year, month, month, day, day.
Then you have...
All right? So you would basically say this is the only way that dates are. And however you'd want, however your country or your company wants it.
But you could also, could you apply different options?
You could do different options. You could do it based, you would store it one way in the database, but when you show it to the user, you would show it in the way that makes them happy.
Okay.
So in this case here, I'll just insist that it's done this way. But I would want to store it in the database in a standard date format, show it to the user in their language, and let them use their calendar.
And I'm sure ASP.NET actually has things that allow us to kind of identify where the user is so we can actually show them the appropriate format.
Exactly. So you can figure out the user's language, the user's locale. You can present dates and money to them in that way. You can also switch from left to right to left, as you like. Here we're going to say apply format in edit mode as well. And let's go and then recompile this and see what it looks like. And maybe it'll make a difference. Do I need to run it again? Okay. So we'll run this, hit /movies. This is really interesting. It changed the date exactly as we wanted it to, but I only had to say that in one place. I didn't even have to say it on this page. I said it on the model itself. It's like I put a Post-it note.
And say, this is what's happening.
For that model, for that release date. And then if we go back over here and we say display release date, it figured it out. This helper here said display release date, and it did the right thing. And that makes things a lot nicer for me. The question then is, does it go all the way? I don't know. See? No matter how I pass the data, it is always going to be this way.
Going to return it in the, okay. Mm-hmm. And this is how it would be saved.
So this is another interesting point. Because it's a date time, it will always be saved as a date time. You never want to store the string that the user gave exactly that way. You want to have Entity Framework do it. Entity Framework knows how to think about dates. SQL Server or MySQL, the database knows how to think about dates.
Okay.
Okay? Cool. Another thing worth pointing out is just how clean the relationship is between the controller, the view, and the model. So let's just look at details again very briefly. We say details, we pass it an ID. Here's what the URL looks like. And we are getting back a movie, and we pass it into this view. So we know that there must be a details view. We open up the details view, and there at the top is that strongly typed movie. So down here, I've got IntelliSense.
Yeah, and it gives you a whole bunch of options.
Right. So if I misspelled that, I would know about that, right? I'm not just saying quote genre and then hoping that it'll work. All right. Cool. So that is a pretty complete example, in fact. And in this case, it created the database for us. In the more intermediate version of ASP.NET Core, we're going to talk about how Entity Framework works in detail.
Okay.
This is a pretty basic thing. It's one table.
It's one table. Where can we see that table?
So all of the, where can we see that table? I would have to go and see if I can look at it into my Server Explorer. You're going to challenge me to find my data connection. How do you look at local DB? I don't remember how to do this. Let's find out. That database connection, and actually I believe local DB is a good question that you've asked. Server Explorer. There is a specific way, there it is, local DB in the server name, to say that server name. I think that this is a certain version. Let's see, take a look here. This is my local database server name, if I remember correctly. And what I could probably do to save time is go over here to get the, where did we say that was? App settings?
Thanks, yeah.
Crazy auto-generated name. I'll put that into Notepad. And let's try that again. Actually, I haven't thought to do that in a while, so it's good that you brought it up.
Because I'm pretty sure if we restart this application, would all the data that we've created disappear?
It'll definitely stay away. It'll definitely stay there. We're not going to lose any data, I promise that. But for development purposes, you usually end up tossing that data often, and you have a test harness that will go and create that. So put in local DB. Oh, you can also view local DB database names with View, SQL Server Object Explorer.
Right there at the top.
Ah, there it is.
And we just matched it out to the name.
Yeah, there we go. What I was doing was too complicated. There it is.
Okay, so that's it.
And look, there's your columns.
And there's movie.
Yep, it's good that you brought that up.
So I could actually manually add stuff in here.
Sure, if you
wanted to. And it will show up.
Another way that people will do things is they will write tests, and in the test they will drop the database completely, recreate it from scratch, and then load it from a JSON file or an XML. So you could go and find test data online, put it in a temporary file, run a test, and that would populate your database and get you started.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. So that is a real, small, but real application that does CRUD, create, read, update, and delete, using ASP.NET Core.
So we are looking at loggings as a final module for today. So one of the things that you mentioned in the previous module where we're looking at validations, that you said look at all the logs that are coming back.
Right. When we went and added database access and we scaffolded out our application, while I was going and doing that, I noticed, if I have Kestrel over here on the right, as soon as I hit like /movies, I got a lot of information, not just the stuff that we saw before about controllers and things, but notice that we actually saw a SQL query appear in here. You see where it says info : it says entity framework, which we'll learn about later. They said, hey, we executed this database command and it took 15 milliseconds. And there's the SQL, which is really cool because we never wrote any SQL. So it got me thinking about all the different logging that we could do, and I was wondering how it got hooked up.
Okay, so shall we have a look at that?
Let's figure it out.
So like the word of the day has been dependency, I'm pretty sure there is a dependency that exists or we have to bring in that handles that for us.
Exactly. So if we go and look at this application, which is an MVC app that we created with File New Project, we can look in two places as before, in project.json or in references. So I'll make a little room here, and I see a couple of things. I see logging to the console, and then kind of logging to what they call debug out, or kind of just generically out to the world. There's Windows debug logging, and that allows you to listen in and see the logging in Visual Studio, or if you deployed it into Azure, you could listen into your logging. This console logging here, though, is inside of logging.console.
Okay.
All right. So where does that get added? Well, that's a service, right?
It is a service.
So here we said logger factory. We'll talk about where a logger factory came in a second. See how console and debug, two separate packages, two separate extensions. All right?
All right.
And console